Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
Well, it's my great pleasure to welcome Zan Garland here today from Solid Ground. Been involved with Solid Ground for, quite a few years. I actually got to know the organization back when they used to be called the Fremont Public Association, because they partly were responsible for putting on the Fremont Solstice Parade, which was sort of my definition of the greatness of the Great Northwest and Seattle. They don't do that anymore, partly because they've moved on to much more important and things within our community, even though that was only a small part of what they did even back then. They're involved in a lot of very important work, and they have a wonderful organization and a building in the Wallingford neighborhood. So if you're ever there, you should definitely drop in and see for yourself all the different activities that are going on there to help people in a whole variety of ways. Anyway, I'm sure Zan will give you a lot more detail about it, and it's great that she took some time to come out here and talk to us about it. So.
Thanks. Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to connect with you. You can move up if you want to. It's kind of a small group today. I feel kind of, I'm mic'd right now, so it feels kind of official. But Solid Ground is a big local anti-poverty organization. So last year we served 58,000 people in King County in 5 different program areas. We do most of our work in ending homelessness and ending hunger, but we also do advocacy. So we do some statewide advocacy and some individual advocacy. We do transportation work. So we get people with disabilities and seniors to appointments who can't necessarily take the buses and don't have cars. And then we also have a department called Volunteer Resources. So we hire and train AmeriCorps members to be dispersed and increase capacity in local community groups. So those are our 5 different program areas. I'm going to talk mostly about our work to end hunger and homelessness today. We served less than 40,000 people in 2008 and then jumped to 58,000 in 2009, partly because our transportation program increased, but also because the needs of our community increased really significantly last year. And we were really fortunate to get additional support from different public institutions, but also a lot of private support to maintain that kind of growth. Solid Ground is really a big public-private partnership. We get a lot of our support from the government, but we can't really do our work to end poverty and end homelessness without private support. To give you an example of that, we have a Broadview shelter that provides emergency shelter for survivors of domestic violence. The bricks and mortar of that building are provided by government sources, but we provide support groups and tutoring and case management that's provided by private sources. And what that does, kids who are homeless, kids who are in that kind of transition, end up going to school at about a 50% rate, where kids in regular households go to school at about an 80% rate. So no matter how smart that kid is, they're getting half the education that they should be. And so we're able to give them tutoring to keep them at grade level, even if they're going through traumatic times. We're also able to do support groups, especially for boys. A lot of times boys, the only male role model they have is a violent, abusive person. And so we try to talk to them about, conflict resolution that's nonviolent, that kind of thing. And so we couldn't do the work to end the cycle of violence and the cycle of poverty without private support. But we need, a lot of the public support in order to, hey, Jeff, to keep the programs going and get them off the ground. So that's kind of how we work. And I'll talk to you a little bit about our hunger programs first. We do a lot of work to get access to food for people, and we also do a lot of education to make that access kind of a long-term resource for families. So to give you an example of that, we have a farm in South Seattle that gets fresh produce into local food banks. It's one of the only sources of produce that gets into food banks because a lot of times grocery stores, especially in times like these, are buying much closer to their margin. If you've noticed, a lot of the oranges that used to have big stacks in the grocery stores are kind of a lot closer to that green liner than they used to be. And so the food banks are actually feeling the brunt of that because grocery stores are selling all their fruit. And it's good, but it's also something that, we're one of the main sources of produce that gets into the food bank right now. And we're really local produce just because it's coming straight from the farm in South Seattle. We also were able to double our Food Security for Children program last year through private sources. That's a program that gets food that's infant and toddler appropriate into the food banks. It's really important, especially as food bank attendance went up by 30% last year. Of that 30%, 80% were children. More and more families are feeling the need for food, and we heard anecdotally from a lot of those families that food is the last thing that gets bought. So what happens because of that is that there's a really interesting intersection that happens between food insecurity, which means people don't know where their next meal is coming from, and obesity, because people buy the most calorie-dense food they possibly can because they don't know where the next meal is coming from. So there's a whole lot of unhealthy people who don't have any money to be much healthier. So what we do is we get healthy food into the food banks, but we also teach classes in schools and in community centers to provide kind of some better understanding of how to cook healthy, nutritious food on a budget. We have a program called Operation Frontline that has 6 classes. It's a series for families. They get incentives for coming. We've actually gotten some incentives from people at Microsoft, like little thumb drives, if people go to all the classes. So it's really cool for, getting people to come back. We go to the community centers where people attend, so we don't make them come up to Wallingford if that's not their neighborhood. And one of the classes for all of our Operation Frontline programs always goes to the grocery store. So they have a contest of who can get the most nutrients in a meal for the cheapest. We teach unit pricing, we teach label reading, really practical stuff. So those classes are really great, and that kind of is the way that our Hunger Action Center works. We provide healthy produce, and we teach people how to eat it and use it and have kind of long-term solutions to ending hunger for their families. Our housing programs are expanding, and I'm going to show you a video in just a minute about it's just a really quick video, about the brochure you guys have that's red. We're building affordable housing out at Sandpoint. Solid Ground's always been in every other realm as it relates to ending homelessness. We've done a lot of homelessness prevention. One of the areas we increased our service provision last year was in foreclosure prevention. We have a program called the Housing Stability Project right now that provides one-time financial assistance to families and individuals to prevent them from getting evicted or getting foreclosed on. We work with only families and individuals who can continue to pay their rent or continue to pay their mortgage, but have gotten behind for an emergency situation. And so the way that works is if they can prove that they can continue to pay on those mortgages or rents, we can pay the back payment, and then after a year, 93% of those people are still housed. So it's really cost effective compared to building housing. It's a lot more expensive, but it really does about the same thing as it relates to ending homelessness. We're preventing homelessness in the first place. We provide emergency shelter. A lot of times the number one cause for families becoming homeless is domestic violence, so we don't want to prevent homelessness for those families. We want them to come into the emergency shelters, and then we have case management for them to get them out of the shelters into their own safe, affordable housing. And one thing we've realized in doing all of that work and not having affordable housing is that one of the biggest needs in our communities is affordable housing. So now we are, for the first time, getting into the affordable housing world. We're building 52 units of affordable housing for families out at Sandpoint. It's permanent, which is really important. We have a lot of transitional housing right now at Solid Ground. That is great because people get a lot of services and get back on their feet. The problem with it is if you've ever had to move and pay first last deposit, it can be huge, even if you're making money, to try to save enough to do that. So what we try to do is for those transitional families, help them find those expenses that they might need, help them talk about their budget, that kind of thing. But with our new affordable housing, people are going to be able to stay as long as they need to. Typically, people who move into affordable permanent housing stay for about the same length of time as they would if it was transitional housing. But because it's their choice to leave when they're ready, it's a lot more powerful decision for that family, and they can feel like it was their choice to move on instead of us kicking them out and not having necessarily a place to go. We don't do that. We usually try to get people to find a place to go, but it's hard without enough affordable housing. So this is just a quick 3-minute video to show you what we're going to be doing out at Sandpoint.
We are all better off when families have a safe, secure, affordable housing. And Solid Ground Sandpoint Housing is going to provide families with that security, and it will make our communities stronger.
This particular project at Sandpoint is interesting to me for a bunch of reasons. I think, first of all, it's important because I believe in the 10-year plan to end homelessness. I think it's a bold goal for our region. I mean, it's a beautiful place. This place, I'm looking out the window at the Cascade Mountain Range, at Magnuson Park, and it's a gorgeous place. I would want to live here. This is an incredible quality of life. But what I think often happens in our communities is that we leave the least desirable places for people who can't afford to live there, and that people should be able to walk to parks and have beautiful playgrounds and open spaces and a quality of life that enhances their family's health and well-being and enhances the community's health and well-being. As a community, we're saying, yeah, people deserve to live in a beautiful place, and it's also a smart way to think about reclaiming space and taking formerly military housing and reclaiming it and reusing it in ways that benefit our community as a whole.
It was very difficult to find affordable housing because some agencies do credit checks. Some agencies have long, exhausted waiting lists. And some agencies, even though they consider to be affordable, the prices are high.
The work that we're doing at Sandpoint responds to one of the greatest needs in our community. The housing that we're building there will meet 10% of the housing that the 10-year plan says is required to meet the needs for homeless families in King County.
We all are stronger when our whole economy is stronger when people are stable. They're able to contribute. They're able to use their strengths and their talents, and they're able to contribute to innovation and growth and progress. And I think when you don't provide those kinds of foundations for people, it just it hurts everyone. When you have a society where you really cut off the ability of an entire group of people who, because they don't have stable housing, are not able to contribute their ideas, their innovations, their creativity, their skill sets, their passions to our economy, then we're just missing out on this huge segment, right? So what has drawn me to the capital campaign at Sandpoint is, first of all, I've been a longtime supporter of Solid Ground, and I respect the organization. I feel like it's well run. It has an incredible breadth of services to people in the community. It's very flexible because of that. It's able to meet families' needs quickly and efficiently and effectively.
Please join Solid Ground in building stronger communities. It's a smart investment.
So yeah, that's about it. I wanted to leave you with a quick story. We started a new program last year called Rapid Rehousing. It's a program that is kind of a pilot. Solid Ground is usually in the running for pilot programs with the government, so this one isn't privately funded. But basically what was happening is we used to work with families who had a lot of barriers, coming out of domestic violence, having a lot of, credit issues. I mean, we definitely want to work with them to get better credit. That's important. But, we worked with families who had a lot of barriers. What we've noticed during the recession is that families who don't have barriers are becoming homeless. And what they're doing is they're looking to find emergency shelter too. They don't really need the services that emergency shelter provides, but they don't have anywhere to live. So what Rapid Rehousing does is it provides funding for families to live in market rate housing for a short period of time while they get back on their feet. And we have case managers who work with them to make sure they're taking the right steps to do that. So we had a family who the husband was a construction worker and the wife was a nurse. She wasn't certified because she had been home with the children, and her husband just kept looking for a job until he couldn't find one and they had to move out of their home. She knew that if she took 2 months to get recertified, she could be the breadwinner. That's when the family came to us. We provided them a couple months in market rate housing. She got her certification back, and now she's making the money for the family, and he's staying at home with the kids while the construction industry rebounds. So it's something where, we're doing really important things. We're doing really innovative things. We're working mostly with families and really trying to kind of bring together public side, private side to stabilize the community. One thing I wanted to put out there to you is that last year we had an online email campaign that someone in this room actually contributed towards a match to. And it was the first time we had ever raised the amount of money that we did in 1 week. We went from raising $10,000 the whole year in 2008 to raising $8,000 in this 1 week. Because of this match. And so it's something that if you're interested in contributing towards Solid Ground, I could put those dollars towards the match. And so not only would it get matched by Microsoft, but it would inspire others to give online during that time. We use SharePoint as our website software, so people could be also excited about the work that you all do here at Microsoft. So I wanted to put that out there and also, have time for questions if you guys have any questions. So thanks for having me. Anyone have questions or thoughts about what we're doing?
In the video, you mentioned the 10-year plan. What is that?
So there's a countywide 10-year plan to end homelessness. It started in 2005. The goal was to create kind of a better system for people becoming homeless. A lot of the different supports for individuals and families were pretty dispersed and really hard for people to navigate. So I don't know if you've heard of the 211 community information line, but the United Way provides a community information line that people can call and know about all the resources in the community. And actually, they can even apply to some of our programs through the community information line if they're eligible. So that was kind of a step to coordinate services. There's a lot more work to prevent homelessness, provide right services. But one of the biggest pushes with the 10-year plan was to build enough housing to end homelessness in our county. What that required is organizations like Solid Ground to step up and become a first-time housing provider. We'd always done shelter work, as had a lot of organizations in the city, but a lot of organizations stepped up and started to build affordable housing for the demographic they serve, which has been really important. And so we're actually halfway through the 10-year plan time period. We're not halfway yet on the amount of housing that's necessary. So a lot of the first 5 years goal, though, was to kind of do some of the readiness side of it. So hopefully, other organizations are stepping up now to be able to be ready to build housing. The other thing that happened, since 2005 is that the housing market has changed so dramatically that a lot of the money in housing right now is not in building housing, it's in preventing homelessness. And so, it's been kind of a mixed bag for us in building housing during a recession because it's harder to get money for it, but our construction bid actually came in $1.5 million under. So we had thought we were $500,000 short of our fundraising goal when the construction bid came in, and we realized we could put $1 million towards the next stage. So it's been interesting trying to build housing, right now, but it's been really great just because people have been stepping up for the biggest needs in our community. In 2008, we got a huge amount of support for our housing needs, our capital needs, and it was harder to get the annual emergency services going. And now the emergency work is getting a lot of support, and it's really great because we're able to increase services there. It's harder for us to get that final housing push, but we actually just found out today that we got a $500,000 gift towards the second stage. So we have less than $700,000 to go to build the 100 units of housing out at Sandpoint. Other questions? Thanks again for coming. I hope you guys signed in. I'd really love to, stay in touch, especially on our email list. And, if you take any of these materials, the red one, it talks about our housing project. The one that's over black and white right there has all of our programs in it. If you open that this one up to the middle, it has kind of a headline about everything that we do at Solid Ground. So, yeah. Thanks again.